Welcome back to the Free Vetted podcast, where we spotlight extraordinary people and remarkable talent reshaping our world. Today, Kyle Bowman joins us. Hello, Kyle. He's the
Howdy.
Senior Technical Product Manager at Amazon, where he leads the Climate Pledge Friendly program. His work focuses on making sustainable shopping more accessible by developing product standards and leveraging AI/ML to highlight environmentally friendly products. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Federico. How's it going today? How you doing?
I am doing great. We were talking before camera. I'm in the city today in San Francisco, enjoying the cold weather. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, same here. Freezing, but you know what? Just stimulates the brain, I guess. I don't know. I'm from California. I'm from San Francisco, but like not the cold part of the city. So I still, 15 years later, living here in Boston, haven't figured out how to do cold as I am wearing 3 layers indoors. So we'll see.
Right. For me, the issue is change of scenery, right? Because Guadalajara is much warmer. So, now I'm here and it takes me a few days to get used to, and then, I kind of get used to. So yeah,
I
but
get
it's
it.
fine. So, how do you approach a problem in a new industry where you're not an expert?
That's a good question. I think over the course of my call it sort of business career, I've worked on a whole bunch of totally non sequitur type industries and jobs and things. I started working as an industrial engineering consultant, right? And then I moved into Amazon robotics. So I focused more on logistics and robotics and automating tasks, and then decided, you know what, let's focus actually on international aviation and how do you build supply chains internationally, and then left that all behind. And now I'm working more honestly as a software development technical product manager, not using my mechanical engineering degree maybe this much. And so it's a good question because I find in each of the different roles that I've had sort of the core underlying theme is people need to solve big, hard problems, right? And so I find oftentimes, especially coming from San Francisco and looking there, people want to start with the solution. Here's this cool tech that I've made. Here's this really cool thing. Here's AI. Here's ML. Here's LLMs. You're starting with a solution, and people are then trying to sort backwards and find what problems does it solve. I actually think the reverse mindset tends to, from my experience, be more helpful in terms of delivering results that that last and that people really sort of pay attention to, which is how can you really truly define the problem that you're trying to solve, and whether that's through going through some of the, I'll call them more fixed mindsets of defining problems. You have the 5 whys, you have some of the like 6 Sigma type problem solving methodologies, or you could go about it on your own, use your own framework, really getting a crisp understanding of what I need to solve first before you go into actually solving it, I feel like is the right first step, at least. I think I answered the question.
Yeah, I think you did. Which I think is important. The context you gave about all of things that you've been doing. Yeah, and I think that's a great way to solve it. I mean, there are going to be, the way that I see it is there are always going to be problems, right? In any industry, our capacity to solve them with the tools that we have. You were talking about your degree. I haven't graduated from college, to be honest, but I've been doing software engineering for 30 years or so. So, but that gives you like the basic tools, right? You're a generalist, right? You have general knowledge of everything, right? On the particular fields, right? But what I'm trying to convey is this idea of, well, now that you have these tools, then you can go and approach a company, an industry or whatever. And then you see a problem, then with the tools that you have, how can I solve the problem?
Well, and what I think is interesting in the world that we're moving towards right now, with everybody's favorite buzzword, with GenAI and ChatGPT and all of these different folks that are out there, solutions are getting to be cheap. You can go and make something overnight, right? Like vibe coding was the Merriam-Webster's word of the year, right? Which, like, having tried it a couple times myself, you go in, you say, hey, make me a script that's going to, I don't know, open up a new web page, design a website, and and you click enter, and it's like magic, right? It just happens. But that doesn't mean that the website that I just made up to you right now is useful whatsoever. It doesn't mean anybody's going to go there. They're going to pay anything for it, all these things, right? Solutions are cheap, but is it the right solution? Are you actually solving a problem? Is anybody going to be willing to pay you for what you've just vibe coded? I think that's the world that we're moving towards.
Right. This reminds me of a story I used to joke with a friend of mine back in college. And I said, I have an answer. I have an answer for any question. And I would say, yes. And we would just joke about that. But it's this idea of, I have a solution. You can put whatever answer you want, right? So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
agree with you. The Gen AI is great for a lot of things, but there are a few things that we miss, right? Like one is that doesn't have it has a limited context and cannot abstract the solution, right? When you're building software, you're abstracting, right? You're taking a problem in the real domain, and then you figure out how can you code it in a way that represents what the real domain is going on, right? So it can provide, garbage code, and it's going to work based on the behavior, but try to make one single change, right? A very little change, and it's going to be a mess. Yeah, is a reason why we don't code in binary.
Yeah. I was gonna say, just sort of on that point, I tried making a like super simple um, solution on my side just to like test to see how all these things work. Like, can I just we use an internal tool called Quip. I think it's made by Salesforce, but like for just like notes and scrapbooking and those kinds of things when you're trying to generate ideas. And then I wanted to put it into Word, a very simple thing, right? And I clicked it. I said, okay, like make this script. It did it. It downloaded, created a new Word document. Amazing. And it didn't know how to do images. It didn't know how to do tables, any of these things. I spent the next 4 hours just trying to get it to download a single table, just one. And it's one of those things where I know like someone with a software engineering degree of what you're talking about looks at the script, goes, this is garbage code. Like I need to think about this. I need to consider these couple things, and can make it in a couple seconds just based on sort of some abstract contextual understanding of what's going on both sides. But for someone without sort of that deeper knowledge, I have no idea how to write a script to download anything from a website and open up a Word document, right? We can just end up sort of spinning in circles, creating more and more and more spaghetti code until, yeah, maybe it
Right.
works. And then Quip changes one thing, their table changes format, and I'm back to my 4 hours of spinning in place. Anyhow, mostly just saying like, yeah, it's a strange new world out there, and we'll see what happens. But if you know what problem you actually want to solve, I think that at least helps get you in the right place to start with.
Yes, yes, and the other thing I was going to talk about is this idea of um, when you're building, you're learning. So
100%.
if now even if you have a perfect Gen AI, right? You can snap your fingers, have the solution. You have the solution, but you haven't learned, which is great if like if you know one language and you want to build something in another language, it can be good enough, right? For
Right.
that things, I spent weeks learning Bash, right?
Mm.
It's a hard environment to work, right? But it's amazing the things you can do with it, right? You can actually build applications with it. It was one of the exercises that I would give to my trainees. Build a well, basically we will do a multidimensional calculation, right? They will build a multidimensional matrix to find the solution of, I don't remember what it was, but it's hard to build on Bash because the language is very, I don't want to say garbage, but it's symbols, and it's
Dense.
hard
It's
to,
dense.
it's
Yeah.
dense. Yeah. Because it's not garbage, it's actually really powerful, right? But it's hard to interpret, right? And that was kind of the challenge. And then they were amazed what they could do with that, right? Anyway, but if I had to do it again now, if I had to build something like that, I would just ask ChatGPT and it will work for small little
Right.
things. But you have to be very specific and provide the thinking, of what are things that you want to do, right? Iterate like this, do this, take the variable like this, right? Yeah. And the same thing with JavaScript, right? The semicolon at the end, the syntaxes, all those type of things,
Exactly.
yeah. Because eventually, it happens to me that I lose that, sensitivity on the syntax, and I just say, ChatGPT, please fix it for me. And it's, good enough.
Yeah. And I feel like there's also like, I don't think anybody is going to like miss the capability of remembering to put a semicolon at the end of a line. Like it's not like that was a like a key human input that they were putting in there that's like really like, hey, my magnum opus is that I know how to put a semicolon at the end of the line. Like, no, right? Like it just made the thing work. And so like offloading that mental load to some other system that does it automatically for you, like Cool. Makes total sense. I feel like the like sort of core creative thinking that's happening before that of like, okay, here's the order of operations that I want to follow. Here's the things that I need you to do and the like exception handling that I want you to have. And like, I'm going to write it that this is this. Please format it so that it runs in Bash, for example. Like
Right.
I'm to your point of like learning as I'm going, I know what's going to work. I know how it should work. I'm understanding what I'm building. And yes, the formatting in the end looks different between Bash, Python, sort of C++, whatever I'm going to write it in. But I don't know that I'm like losing any semantic knowledge there as opposed to just like having it translate.
Yeah, and for that, I think it's great. It's a great tool because it allows you to it allows you to focus on higher purpose problems, right? And then the minutia of the syntax, you can delegate it to the LLM, right?
Exactly.
So I think that's great. I'm looking forward to see what's going to happen in the future with Gen AI, right? Because it seems that it's improving so fast.
Yeah, but then I read a really interesting article from MIT that was saying 98% of Gen AI integrations over the past, I think it's like a 3-month-old article at this point, 98% of these integrations in major businesses failed to make any money. People would be like, yes, we need Gen AI. And they would go and they would implement it and they do these things or whatever. And then their team would be like, cool, we can make pictures of dogs automatically. Yay. Which is nice, but like it didn't drive the things that they were using it to the point that I was making earlier of like, it's easy to make a solution. How do you make sure it's solving the right problem? People were just throwing the solution out there at everything, and 98% of them were not going anywhere. Right? And then you're just spending a ton of money to stay in the same place.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. If you build it, they will not come, right? I mean, it's
I think that if you build it, they will come mantra is no longer necessarily true, right? I think maybe for some things, like if you go and you build a amusement park, right? Okay, cool. I could see that being a thing. You probably have to still do a lot of marketing and a lot of thought behind it. And anybody out there who makes amusement parks, don't come after me. But I do think now that we can build anything so quickly and really sort of, I think there's some internal metrics that we've been looking at here where I can't share the numbers, but it's a pretty significant percentage of time that has been reduced in terms of the amount of folks are spending on syntax and coding and code reviews and these kinds of things. Like you can crank out a prototype, a review, a something in an amount of time that's way shorter to find out if I did have something, would they come? And I think that's the like key answer that you can get ahead of time, right? Instead of spending 3 years building this one app, this native platform, this one thing, and then hoping people come, you can spend 3 weeks, vibe code it, put it together. Yeah, it's going to be horrible. You're not going to understand everything behind things. There's going to be all sorts of bugs in it, but you can at least test your hypothesis and understand, would people come to my amusement park if I built it? You know what I mean?
right, right. I mean, I think that there is some value on that phrase in the sense that when you're envisioning something, you're building something that this didn't exist before. So you need a little bit of dreaming, right?
Definitely.
So there is some value in that. But then on the other hand, you also need to validate your assumptions, validate that what you're doing is going to be useful for somebody, and then you have to promote it so people will come.
Yeah, totally agreed. And it's a brave new scary world out there for all of us, and we'll see how we survive.
Yeah, but I mean, this idea of AI is going to take so many jobs. I've been kind of working on talking about this a lot, and I'm getting to a conclusion that that's not necessarily true. I mean, maybe jobs are going to be transformed. I believe more on the augmentation. People with AI are going to take, your job. If you don't work with AI, right? Uh,
Yeah.
for that, I think that's a better way to put it. But then on the other hand, the idea of replacing people with AI works up to a certain point. I mean, you can do some administrative menial work, data transformation, basic data transformation jobs, right? I think that could work, right? There's so many guardrails that you need to put around it to make it work that right now it's not worth it, right? Maybe in the future.
I mean, that's like the joke that I don't even know if it's a joke anymore that people have been opening positions for vibe code checker, where somebody else has vibe coded something and then you go in and make sure that it actually like does what it is that they're thinking it should do. I think it might actually become a thing, to your point of like it's the person with AI that makes the thing, and like now we need some other guardrails and systems and people to be able to like package it and make sure that the rocket actually launches instead of exploding on the launch pad, you know? Um,
Right.
yeah, the debate we were having with some of our leadership recently is like, okay, we have sped up our like code review process by X% by like implementing AI. Amazing. If we start to like take that same mindset, can we just start to replace? So if you like replace the bottom level of checks and then you replace the secondary level of checks with another set of AI and then another level of that and all the way up, do you just eventually start having AI all the way down to where nobody actually knows what's happening, and like one change can propagate all the way up without any like, I'll call it common sense being involved in the process. And like while maybe it works for 95% of cases, what are the 5% of cases where it doesn't, and how can you implement something that's going to catch those 5%?
Well, that would be interesting. Yeah. And if the process can improve itself, then it can go rampant and go crazy.
And another interesting article on this I read was about a security flaw that got introduced into, gosh, it was one of the big models and I don't remember which one, but basically the core of the idea was people who were not actually malicious, they were just testing whether they could do this, realized that this model was pulling a lot of its coding knowledge from GitHub. So they went into GitHub and created a whole bunch of repositories saying, hey, if you're solving this type of security problem, you want to use this type of code. And they put it in here. And so then when the model re-upped and trained itself, it knew, I'm trying to solve this type of security problem. I should use this type of code. And in that code, they had inserted a backdoor. And so then when somebody's system went and did the AI created code and created their security code using the information that was basically summarized, large language model pulled from this GitHub, they were able to just backdoor their way straight in through like essentially like social engineering, but with large language models, which I just thought was a fascinating problem.
Wow. Social AI engineering.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Scary and amazing.
Connecting to what we were discussing at the beginning, that's what I think that the core skills are going to become much more scarce throughout the following years, right? And people are going to be hired based on the core skills, right? Because this experience, when you automate, you don't know what's going on, you don't have control of what's going on, and then eventually this thing could happen.
100% agreed.
Yes, I love a show, an old show called Star Trek, and they have these machines that basically convert energy into into materials, right? And basically, you can say, "Give me a hot coffee or a hot tea," and
Right.
it materializes, right? So, but then you have this issue of people forget how to cook things
Yeah.
because this is so convenient, right?
And what happened? It's kind of like me with Google Maps, right? I use Google Maps to get everywhere. And then if I ever find myself lost in my own town, I'm like, I've done this drive 100 times. How do I not know which way to go? It's like, oh, because every time I'm just following the map. Jeez.
Yes, yes. It actually happened to me recently, something like that. I was in Argentina. I went to renew my passport, and then my phone died, right? So I was at the airport, right? With no local cash, right? I have a few dollars maybe, but you know, so I live in Mexico, but I'm Argentinian, so I had Argentinian pesos, right? I didn't
Right.
need anything because I had my card, right? Which I could use to get some money eventually, right? But my phone was dead. Okay, where is the Airbnb? I have no idea, right? Where am I staying? I know the neighborhood, but I don't know exactly, right?
Or the name of it is
Um,
easy to forget because it's a new city.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
totally.
So, but I kind of know the city, so I kind of know where I am, right? But I can point the direction of where's the house, but that's it, right? So it was funny. It was interesting. It was an interesting experiment, right? I was hungry, so I started walking and find a place to eat, and I said, okay, I will figure it out, right?
Yeah. It'll be
Yeah.
okay.
But it's this you become so dependent.
100%.
And then the other concept that I was learning about this is, if you can materialize anything, then if something breaks, the value of things becomes zero, because you can render
Right.
another one, right? It's like 3D printing an object, but they can do it on the molecular level.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
your phone breaks, no problem. You can print another one, right?
Make a
You
new
can take
phone.
your old
Yeah.
phone and convert it into energy again.
Fascinating.
So
And so it's, yeah,
recycling
like what
becomes,
moot point, or really easy, one or the other. But it's like, yeah, what's the value of a phone if I can just go generate one immediately? Basically
right.
zero, right? The only thing that's valuable is the ability to turn energy into matter and matter into energy. And so like that's the only area where you need to be focused.
As long as you have energy, everything else is, not meaningless, but the value becomes insignificant.
Yeah.
What is the
Yeah.
value of a Stradivarius, right? Because it's unique. That
Right.
uniqueness gets lost.
Right.
So I think that something similar is going to happen with the age of AI. Solutions are becoming, less and less value. It's about, how it's impacting the world, right?
Yeah, there's some like fun economics questions in there. And like I read a book recently in which it's a fantasy series, but like similar type of exploration. There were people who, if they got their hands on this one thing, they could suddenly create gold. Infinite amounts of gold out of nowhere. Exactly what you're saying. And the question is like, who benefits when money becomes irrelevant? Like, is it the people at the top, the people at the bottom? Like, if they're like gold suddenly doesn't matter, you could, like, if someone is able to control that capability, like if like what you're saying with your Star Trek example, if one person is the one, you pay me $5 and I will make anything out of matter for you, is very different than anybody can go to the matter creator and can just generate a new iPhone. But it's control all sorts of fun economics questions. We don't have to get into it, but it was interesting.
Well, actually, there are two books written about Star Trek economy,
Yeah.
because on the show they say this idea of, oh, we are beyond, what is the word, when things are missing, right? Like not it's not
Beyond want.
poverty, it's beyond when resource beyond scarcity, right?
Ah,
Our
there you go. Yeah.
society evolved beyond scarcity, and now we are in pursuit of exploration and higher purpose activities, right? But
Hmm.
then,
Mm-hmm.
there are a few books written about how that should work, because on the show they don't talk about it, right? It's a great, on the story is a great, it sounds great, but
Right.
specifically how it works, right? And
Yeah.
there are a few theories, and one of them is people have a energy quota, right, that they can use, right? Because
Interesting.
there's no currency, right? Then energy becomes a currency.
Yeah. How much energy did you generate such that you can turn around and use that much energy? Because otherwise you have to, like, if everybody's pulling two energies and putting in one energy, you're going to run out of energy. It's like theoretically not an infinite resource.
Right.
So
Energy becomes the money, or the currency.
yeah,
And
fascinating.
I don't know if you know this, but currency can exist without government. It actually exists before government. We
Hashtag
we
Bitcoin
tie,
or
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the same thing of Bitcoin. I mean, we used to use salt as currency, right? Because it's basically a commodity. But then, I don't remember exactly when, 17th century or whatever. Yeah, the government said, okay, we have to regulate currency. And then they built this idea of, well, the currency is this piece of first it was gold, it was, metal, and then eventually it was
silver.
paper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But this idea of the government is the only one that can issue currency, right?
Yeah.
Where before that was not the case, right? And we grew up in that idea that currency and government is a one thing.
Right. And instead, theoretically, if everybody outside of the government all agrees that this piece of paper is worth one chicken, cool. We can all pass the chicken around, no problem. You can trade back and forth within one
Right.
another. It doesn't require a government to set the value of $1 to one chicken, right? I do understand the role of government in this, where if you try to set up that system and then suddenly somebody comes in with a whole bunch of new dollars and they just created it, and now like they have $5 to spend on a chicken. So everybody, of course, is going to want them to buy their their chicken, you flood the market, you devalue the value, whole thing up, country collapses, everybody's sad. Like,
Right.
I get the point of regulation,
Yeah,
but
yeah. I mean, there's value on that, right? But then eventually, the government got used to be the dollar was connected to gold, and then at one point they were like, "We're going to disconnect it." So yeah. So the currency is tied to people's faith, how much faith people have on the currency, whatever it is, right? And that's why we can see the fluctuation of the relative value of one currency to the other one is because of that. With
faith,
additional steps, faith people have and how the perception of the value there is, right?
100%.
In Argentina, so in 2001, the $1 was 1 peso, right? Fast forward to today, and it's 10,000 pesos for $1.
And is that because the inflation crisis happened in between those two? Like, I think it went up and came back, no?
Yeah, in 2023, I mean, this is going up, right? So, but in the last weeks of 2023, they had a projected inflation of 70,000%.
That's
I
just
mean,
insane.
if you project it
Yeah.
for the year, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah, yeah. And the argument was that they were printing money on other countries, right? I don't remember the countries, but because the money is being printed outside of Argentina, then that doesn't affect inflation. That was the argument that
Yeah,
some
of
people were
course.
using. But of course, right? So they got into this concept of assistance. They were giving benefits to half the population, and then the other half was paying taxes to support the first half.
Yeah, I mean, the hyperinflation and everything that goes on within hyperinflation is all, God, it's a very hard problem to solve because how do you tell someone where it's like, hey, today, the dollars that you're holding in your hand will buy you a cheeseburger, but tomorrow it will not buy you a cheeseburger. Do you want a cheeseburger? You're like, yeah, obviously, throw it in. But if everybody's doing that, that's what makes it so that tomorrow it's not worth it. The cheeseburger is worth more. So it's like, how do you stop that cycle? It's
Prices
for
will
smarter
change
people than me.
from morning to evening. So if you go and buy the cheeseburger in the morning, it's one price. In the evening, it's another price because the
That's
inflation was so
crazy.
crazy. So now they
It's
have
insane.
30% inflation. So they were able to
It's just,
take it down, and it was interesting. Yeah, the way that you stop inflation is by reducing government spend. So if you collect more than you spend, then you stop inflation.
you can basically put the brakes on it. Makes sense because people aren't going to stop, so you have to stop the spend somewhere. As the government, that's where you can control the spend. So makes sense. No governments, no cheeseburgers for the government.
Right, right. But then the issue is the political cost that has, because you've been collecting your money from the government. Now the government says we're not going to give you that subsidy or whatever, right? Sorry. So you're going to be angry, and everybody else is going to be angry, right? So
Exactly.
so it has a political cost that no political is willing to accept. It's easy to keep printing money, right? So
Right.
Javier Milei did a good job on explaining the people the issue, the consequences, and how he was going to stop it. But then he needed basically the Argentinian population took a leap of faith, right?
Yeah.
And they said, because he said, we need 48 months to see the changes, the positive changes of stopping the inflation. And people say,
Dang.
we're with you. They hold,
Hold
hope
on for 48. Yeah.
yeah. But the thing is, in 6 months, he reduced inflation so much. And then he kept going and going and going. And yes, of course, you had the voices of people complaining because now they didn't have the benefits, right? But yeah, it was interesting. They found so many subsidies that the government was doing, and some of them are crazy, right? Like a university, it's a social political group that was having a fully funded university by the government. And when they go and they check it out, one of the floors was a disco with alcohol
Hey,
and everything, right?
that sounds lovely.
So things like that they found a lot. So they fire a lot of employees that were not adding value to the the society. But they kept some of the benefits, and then they start reducing the benefits. It was interesting to see, because I had no hopes that it was going to be solved.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a huge macroeconomic problem with like big impacts on the lives of millions and millions of people. And like there are people who
Yes.
obviously rely on those subsidies in order to take care of things outside of going to the disco at the university. And then there's also like times where it's just getting wasted, and like how do you find where the money being spent is actually like really benefiting people and where it's potentially getting wasted? And obviously it's not black or white. There's things in the middle, like some scientific research. Do you want to fund that? Do you not want to fund it? Do you want to fund the army? Do you want to fund, like, I don't know, pick your favorite political hot
Yeah.
like flash topic, right? Like there's an example there. I think the thing that gets me interested in, and how we've like dove all the way into the end of politics, is that like the majority of people actually agree on most things. Like for the most part, we all mostly agree that like, yeah, people should be able to eat food, they should be able to relax, they should have like a safe life, and we should all be like friends with one another for the most part, right? It's just a lot of the like disagreements come in the little nuances of like, well, how do we
How
get
do you make
there?
it happen? Right.
Exactly. And it's just interesting in the current political climate that we have. People are less inclined to like start from, hey, we agree that we should all like live safe, happy, healthy lives, and more focus on like, well, you want to get there like this and I want to get there like that, and therefore we are dire enemies who should never talk to one another and should like never be friends. It's like, that's tough, but you know.
Yes, I mean, the talking about political climate in the U.S., that I've seen people on both sides of the aisle trying to talk about is, if you don't agree to my ideas, you're dead to me, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And but it's a little bit nuanced, but I don't, if you don't have the same ideas, I don't want to talk with you. And then the other thing is, because your ideas are evil, then I can justify, any non-social behavior because you're evil, right? And it
Exactly.
happens on both sides, right? On
100%
different, yeah. So
from
that's
different angles.
I'm reading a
Like
book about,
circling. Oh
yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Um, I'm reading a book about it's Economy in a Lesson by Henry Hazlitt, and it's based on a paper, as the economy to be, what it is and isn't in economy, something like
Mm,
that. So, but this book was published in 1946,
wow.
and you read it and it stays relevant today. So it's this idea of, if you tax something, right, you do not see the works that has been lost, right? Because what you see is the person that gets a benefit. If you benefit a group, then you're benefiting the group in detriment of the others, right? So the group that gets better the benefit is happy, and then the other ones might not see the detriment. Because if I,
Yeah.
if I'm a government, I give you money, right? You're happy, but then I'm taking that money from taxes that could be spent on something else, right? So
Right.
it's very tempting
It's
for a
all a game of
political.
big prioritization, right? Like, and it sort of, this was going to say, sort of bringing it back to the original topic that we had, 40 minutes ago. If you look at some of these political problems, you sort of boil them down to like, hey, here's the one key knob that we want to turn. Like, how do you then measure the outcomes of what you're doing, so you can say like, hey, I know that the problem that I've solved, I've actually like done a good job at solving it, and the solutions that I'm putting into place make sense. They're driving what I want, and they're doing what I need. Because otherwise, to like the point of prioritization, it's very easy to just throw out a solution and say like, hey, look, we're doing something, but was it the right solution? Like, let's say our metric is, I don't know, how much people sleep at night, just to pick something that's not
Right.
controversial, right? And we say, okay, I know that people on average right now are sleeping 6 hours a night. I'm going to spend a whole bunch of money on sleep studies. Well, if I do the money on sleep studies, and at the end of the sleep studies, people are still sleeping 6 hours a night, and I wanted them to get to 7 hours a night, was that the right answer? Maybe not. Maybe instead I should have spent money on, I don't know, sleep therapy or hypnotherapists. And it turns out the hypnotherapy is the right thing, because now people sleep for 12 hours a day because they're getting hypnotized to, I don't know, making up the example, right? But the the point is still the same of like, can you, similar to what you were talking about with Milei, like, can you actually measure the outputs of what you're doing? If you're saying like inflation is our key metric that we're trying to drive, I'm going to put in place a few really tough solutions and we're going to watch the inflation together. And if it doesn't go down, we know we need to do something else. And if it goes down, we know we did a good job. And in his case, like, there's no arguing at the results that inflation has gone down. Like, no matter sort of how you agree with him, left, right, otherwise on the political spectrum, like from a pure sort of engineering problem solution standpoint, like inflation went down, which is, I think, generally viewed as a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. The and what this book talks about is kind of this idea of the unpredicted consequences of the decisions, right? I see a problem and I fix it, right? Which works for engineering, right?
Yeah.
We're kind of geared towards that, you know. But then on economics is yes, but you have to think about the you know,
Downstream
the
impacts. Yeah. Who
yes,
paid?
yes. Right. And of course, this book is more, you know, is libertarian. It, you know, is supporting the ideas of Javier Milei. You know, but it's this idea of we can put a market in place that is going to be self-regulated to find the optimal solution for, you know, the resource problem, right? And I'm kind of paraphrasing, so don't quote me on that. But it's this idea, right? And then Keynes proposed this idea of intervention, right? Government intervention, right? Government has to be everywhere, present, right? So the present government, that's how I grew up. The government is everywhere. I was too young for this, but before, you know, a few generations before me, they had the picture of Eva Perón and Perón, you know, on the schools, like they were gods. The government was present everywhere. You know, they could, you know, they become these god figures. The issue is when you're making a decision from top down, right? You don't see all those, you know, secondary consequences. If
Yeah.
I'm on the top, I can say we have to build a factory there. Why? Because I have a powerful finger. Right? There's no, you know, yeah, there is no. But if it's a market based, then somebody's going to decide to put a factory there because it's the best place to put it. And if he's wrong, that factory is going to close, right? It's going to shut down because it's unable to sustain itself, right? So I think that that's a great mechanism. What I'm concerned is, what I haven't figured out is what happens when you have bad actors, right? And
Yeah.
that are
Exactly.
exploiting the system, right? How much, I don't know how much
100%.
or how little the government should be able to put regulations there, because now we're putting regulations that were Keynesian, you know, policies. But
Yeah.
you know, if the media companies in the US, it went from, I don't know, it was like 80 or something. Now it's 3 or 4, right? So are they getting close to a monopoly, right? Are they talking each other and, you know, and sharing some tactics? I don't know, right? But
Right.
it's easier when you have smaller players, right? And that's where I see the issue.
Well, I think you give a good example with the powerful finger, right? So if, let's say, you have some industry, doesn't matter, there's 100,000 different people all competing for where to build a factory. The ones that are built in the best places will survive. Cool. Now you have those ones there. There's some mergers here. There's some mergers there. Like, everybody's buying da 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 da. And in the end, there's one big company, Factory Corp, right? They own all the factories. Now what do they have? They have one big finger and they say, I want to build a factory there. And again, it's exactly what you said. They're just choosing a spot because they can. And it's not because there's competition or they're going to lose out or all these things. They've cornered the market. And I mean, that's where you have the protections against monopolies and things. And like, where you draw the line on what is considered a monopoly and what's not, and what do you protect against the government. I think that's where there's a lot of really interesting economic debates, and there's people who sort of lean in all of these directions, where I think we can all agree with the base concept of what you said, of like the free market of like, let's put a factory in a place will end up help you choose sort of the winners and losers and make the system overall more efficient. But also the free market, if you let it just run freely for a while, tends towards the monopoly, because the winners will keep winning and they'll win it all. And then off they go, right? They have sort of that advantage. So you
Right.
got to figure out
The
where you want to play.
I was reading the story about the Pinkerton Detective Agency, right? And they did a lot of things, but one of the things that they did is they participated on one of the strikes in mine, and they basically hired the Pinkertons to do the strike, right? And basically, if somebody that strike there, they own, the mining company owned the mining, the housing, the markets, everything. So basically, people that got striking, they kick them out of the house, right? So immediately, right? Because they had this little monopoly on this little area, right? But big enough to affect a family, right? And they
Right.
would use violence and all that stuff. So what I'm trying to say with this is an example where having monopoly or having the market doesn't work, because they were saying, but we're hiring them at a salary that they agreed to. Yes, but it was during the Depression. It was different situations that would it was an unfair advantage for the company.
Exactly.
So yeah. So in that case, I think yes, that was bad and that should not have happened, right? So, but then on the other hand, the labor in Argentina is very strong, right? And I know I'm talking about different examples that are completely different situations, but basically in Argentina, 5% of salaries used have to go to the labors, right?
A,
Labor
a
unions.
union.
So they became very powerful, so powerful that they would they would they were able to uh, put had influence on the government. They would do strikes. They would cut the streets, and in 2022 they had 9,700 strikes. They cut different parts of the city, right? And they would coordinate it, so the whole city would get, the Buenos Aires would get blocked, basically. Nobody could get in and out. So you're going to work. I was going to work,
Oh,
and then I would get
jeez.
strike. So, and this has been happening for the last 20, 30 years. So it's been going up and up and up, right? So then you have that, and that's an excess of power. So Milei just recently changed a law, right? Where now every employee can choose which union they want to give their contribution, and they can choose not to, right? So now the unions have to compete to get
Mm,
the, which is, I think, is a great way to take power away from people that has been 20, 30 years, leading these union organizations, right?
make them earn what they're promising.
Yes, yes. So it's interesting, having these two extremes of the coin. So, Kyle, we're running out of time. It's been
No worries.
amazing speaking with you. Do you wanna share final remarks before we wrap it up?
I mean, I think we wandered all over the place. This was super fun. Thanks for chatting. I don't know. I think overall, approaching life problems with a critical eye, all these things, like, it can be fun. It can be interesting. You can learn a lot. And the world that we're heading towards, who knows what's going to happen. To everybody else out there, Godspeed.
That's amazing, Kyle. Thank you very much for joining us today. I think we had a great conversation. We went all over different topics. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Rodrigo. Talk soon.